Good evening, the elite of Visakha and also dear students. So as you are aware, this is the series of lectures that are organized by Vijayanirman Company and Ahamahamika, an NSTL forum. This Ahamahamika is a forum for reviving the good habit of book reading amongst youth. So jointly, we have been organizing this lecture series by the eminent speaker and our guide and philosopher, Dr. Prasanna Kumar garu. This is the third in the series, and the idea is to record these things and make it available for the people who will get benefited out of it. So, why I need to make this announcement every time is only to request you to help us in recording it neat and clean, loud and clear. And the request goes to switch off your mobiles or at least keep it in the meeting mode. So today, sir will be speaking on the international relations of India. So it is very important topic. Before actually I invite sir for that topic and give a little bit introduction to that, I request Sri Varahal Setti garu to welcome Dr. Prasanna Kumar garu with a bouquet. So any country is the international relationship is a very, very vital requirement, as you are all aware. And particularly for our country, it was well founded on very ethical principles of Panchsheel and all. So generally a country has to maintain its foreign policy, keeping the developmental requirements of the nation and the psyche and social fabric of the people and the developmental infrastructural development and other relations, and also the territorial integrities and the cross-border problems. With all these things in mind, that foreign policy is to be an integral part of the larger efforts of the development of the nation. So no exception for us, and we have taken a very pragmatic stand, and the pursuit of the nation was the main interest, founded on Panchsheel. In the Cold War region period, we have taken a stand of non-alignment, but we have slightly leaned towards Russia. Sir always says, famous quote of him, that Nehru, when asked to, are you leaning on left or right? No, I am standing straight. So that is our picture, but the defense cooperation, because I am a defense scientist, clearly indicates that we have slightly leaned very intelligently and very cordially towards Russia. So post-Cold War, naturally we have to make bigger avenues and expand our the foreign policy and the relations. So we are seeking the best relations with the United States and the European Union, Japan and Israel particularly, and Brazil, and every country, even Arabic countries also. So this another point is the ever-changing growth. So demands the nation to assess their strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, and the threats. The SWOT analysis very applicable for any foreign policy. So with all these things, the past, present, and future. Actually, sir, initially we thought that this would be one lecture, but as he is going to say why it cannot be, so this series will, on this topic, the lectures will continue for 2 or 3 as it is required. And any number of lectures from Dr. Prasanna Kumar garu will be very, very welcoming, and we will enjoy like another musical concert. So I invite you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to stand before you and share my ideas, my thoughts this evening in the third of a series of lectures being organized by Dr. Vijay Kumar and Sri Rangarajan. The idea came about 1 year ago. Let me repeat what I had said earlier. It was Mr. Rangarajan who suggested that I should speak and the recorded speeches should be made available in CD form to the students. If they are useful, they will benefit from them. He gave me homework. All learning is reading. Reading is learning. Learning is sharing. And therefore, I accepted the challenge for two reasons. Reason number one, it enabled me to widen my canvas of learning. Secondly, to share some of the important things that I learned with the younger generation. So all of you know that university education, as Nehru said, is torch bearing. You hold aloft the torch and hand it over to the next generation. Nobody is a creator or owner of knowledge. Knowledge is constantly acquired and transmitted. In ancient times, orally, in modern times, through different forms. Now, therefore, I started this with great trepidation and in utmost humility. I had before me the message of one of the greatest teachers of modern times, Sir Isaiah Berlin, I repeat, who said, a teacher must remember 2 or 3 things, a good teacher, if he wants to be. Number 1, he must always try to be humble. Number 2, he should not have any feeling that he is influencing a number of students. If you teach 1,000 students, 2 or 3 may be influenced. The rest of them may not be. So don't be under the illusion I am shaping the minds of generations of students. That's all nonsense, he said. Don't be under such illusion. Third important thing is, he said, don't use hyperbole. Your language must be very cautiously chosen and articulated. These were the 3 great messages Sir Isaiah Berlin had given. I am trying to walk in the footsteps of such teachers with utmost humility. I have very severe limitations as far as scholarship is concerned, and I am aware of it. Now, I like political science or politics for one simple reason. It is undoubtedly the oldest of social sciences. Aristotle called it the mother science, the master science. Unfortunately, today politics, the word politics means something very dirty. And those who teach politics must be naturally dirty in mind and behavior. Now, that's not it. That is why when Sri K.S. Shastri Garu asked me to speak in the presence of Srimati Purandeswari, when Shastri Garu celebrated his birthday, he called it an oration. I said, don't call it an oration, it's just a lecture. I took up a very fundamental maxim of politics, principle of politics, that politics essentially is the art of the possible. Art of the possible. Achieve the possible. And making the impossible possible is the high art of politics. Hundreds of examples are there. We shall go through them. Therefore, I submitted to the distinguished gathering present then 3 very important reasons why everybody must study politics, analyze politics, explain politics, understand politics. I mentioned 3 important points. The 3 important points I mentioned, I repeat. Somebody may ask a question. There are some people who do not go to bed unless they read a newspaper. whether it is the Hindu or Inadu or whatever it is. They don't go to bed at all. Their daily schedule is incomplete without reading the paper. I myself used to read, you'll be surprised to know, 50 years ago when we came to Visakha, there were days when I used to read the Hindu paper of day before yesterday today. Because it used to come from Madras by mail. And if the mail was late, it used to be distributed on the third day. Still the Hindu paper must be gone through. Mr. Varahal Chetty is a shining example. He will not leave one letter of the Hindu or Inadu unread. Therefore, why should you read newspapers? Why should you watch television? Or why should you bother about politics? After all, politics today is so varied. When was politics good? I'll ask you a question. Was it good in Kautilya's time? Was it good in Machiavelli's time? Is it good in modern times? In Manmohan Singh's time? No, politics is never good, can never be good. Because politics is pursuit of power. But still, I said political analysis must be done for 3 reasons. The first reason, this was stated by one of the great political scientists of modern times, Robert Dahl. Dahl gave 3 reasons. Why should you analyze? Especially students appearing for civil service examinations will be happy to know. Why should you analyze, for that matter, social phenomena or political phenomena or economic phenomena? Reason number 1, Dahl says very lucidly, to understand things around us better. To know things around us better. What is happening? Why is it happening like this? What is happening, number 1? To understand things around us better. Just a little better. Now, what is this coalition government? What will happen to Telangana? What will happen to Andhra? What is the Seemandhra representation? What is the Telangana representation? And what is the media doing? These are all very simple, elementary questions, isn't it? You can watch it without excitement. Because as Swami Ranganathananda very brilliantly said, this is a dangerous age of triple E. Triple E means entertainment, excitement, exhaustion. Exhaustion. Finally, exhausted. Today the match is gone, you are exhausted. Entertainment. Cricket is entertainment. News is entertainment. Cinema is entertainment. Everything is entertainment. And then excitement or blood pressure. Come on, wicket is not falling. What is happening? What is happening? Tendulkar is out. And so many calls, missed calls are there on the cell phone when something goes wrong in cricket. So much of excitement. And finally, you don't get sleep, exhaustion. You are exhausted. Now, this is Ranganathananda very brilliantly said, age of triple E. Now, in this triple E, why should you analyze? The first reason is to understand the world around us better. The second reason is to make more intelligent choices. All life, you will agree with me, existence is nothing but choice making. You will agree with me? What medicine to buy, which hospital to visit, which doctor to consult, which channel to see. There are so many channels on television. And for youngsters, whom to marry, whom not to marry, and then what to read, what not to read. University, when we were teaching, students used to come, sir, we'll join for research. Why? Why? Because there is no other thing available, sir. At least do research. Till we get a job, we'll get. Ladies, as J.P. Nayak very rightly said, in the university campus itself, Nayak once gave a lecture on higher education some 35 years ago and said, students join universities and colleges because they have nothing else to do. And girls because matrimonial alliances are not finalized. That was 40 years ago. Today things have changed. Today things have changed. So everything is choice making. A boy wants a girl as pretty as Aishwarya Roy, etc. And a girl wants a boy as able as Tendulkar in cricket, as articulate as Amitabh Bachchan on television, and as handsome as Hrithik Roshan or somebody, all put together. You make it. This is choice making. That is why Simon and others, they said choice making, there's so many models are there. The best satisficing model. This is the best among the available things. Our students used to say, why did you choose this? Sir, yedi dorakale sir, ide best kada. I accepted it. No, quite right. You accept the best available option. Choice making, to make intelligent choices. That is the second reason why you make analysis. The third reason is more important. Every human being has a purpose of life. The purpose of life, said a great writer, is a life of purpose. You need to achieve something in life. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. You cannot be the Prime Minister of the country. You cannot be the Chief Minister of the state. You cannot be the Vice Chancellor of a university. You may not be a big man, but still you will be able to do something. Somewhere a little change is affected. A person is made happy. A child is educated. A poor person is fed. Some little change. A colony becomes a different colony because of you. An organization benefits from you. To bring about change, big or small, at any level, that's the third important reason why you should analyze. Ladies and gentlemen, these three goals I placed before the gathering in my very first lecture. I repeat, because political analysis is very essential for everyone, not necessarily to get involved in politics, but to make intelligent choices and bring about change, etc., etc. Now, the first lecture we organized, Mr. Rangarajan and Dr. Vijay Kumar, the first lecture was on the freedom struggle. That was a very challenging subject for me, history. We talked about it. What a great pluralistic society the great founding fathers tried to achieve for India 100 years ago. We talked about it. Very interestingly, the first lecture was organized on 28th of December, the day on which Indian National Congress, not the present Congress, Indian National Congress was founded by Alan Octavian Hume, an Englishman, a noble Englishman, who invited a Hindu, Banerjee, to become the first president of the Congress at Mumbai, December 28, 1885. A Hindu, a Parsi, a Muslim, an Englishman were the first four presidents of the Congress. Of the 20 years, first 20 years, there were 4 Muslims, 4 Parsis, 5 Hindus, and 4 Englishmen who ran the Indian National Congress before Gandhi arrived on the scene. That was the first lecture we presented. The second lecture we talked about the making of the Constitution. And very interestingly, my esteemed friend Mr. Varhal Chetty, he's a very interesting man. He asked me a question, why did you refer to Granville Austin in your lecture? Look at the thoroughness with which he reads a newspaper. I did not realize the lecture was delivered on January 25th, 2011. Mr. Rangarajan very thoughtfully organized it one day before the Republic Day. Next day, Granville Austin's name was there in the Padma Awards. Mr. Varhal Chetty thought that I was such an intelligent fellow. I foresaw Austin's selection in the Padma Awards. I did not see that matter for that matter, I did not see it. So the second lecture was on the making of the Constitution, an extraordinary political document, which Austin praised as the second greatest document since the one that was made at Philadelphia in 1787. Austin's great tribute to Indian Constitution. The third today, I have chosen international relations. I must honestly say that I have chosen this subject for a very simple reason. Very interesting reason. Last year, I was invited to Delhi to a seminar where a young professor, he is in his 30s. That boy came, I call him a boy because I'm twice his age. That boy came and spoke on India's strategic relationship with neighbors. Professor Harsh Pant was in 30s. I heard him last year, not this 2010, 2009 October. And 2010, this boy brought out a book, The China Syndrome. This is a recently published book. Immediately, thanks to Book Center's Gurnath, I could get this book. And then I went through it, small book, very lucidly written. Today's young men and women do not write long sentences, do not write big paragraphs. Their English is electronic English, sometimes very difficult for old people like us to follow. Because it's not a joke, but it happened. It seems a fellow, when he was asked to write in 2-3 lines Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet, on the mobile it seems he sent a message to, then letter B, 0, not, then 2 and B. In 5 letters, he wrote Shakespeare's Hamlet, to be or not to be. So this is electronic age. Therefore, they don't write long paragraphs and sentences. So this man, Harsh Pant, he writes a very interesting, it's a warning to us. Mr. Rangarajan very rightly pointed out why the subject is relevant. He says, when Jiabao, the Chinese Prime Minister, shook hands with Manmohan Singh, he said, when we shake hands, the whole world will be watching. Look at this. This is not a simple statement of courtesy. When we shake hands, the whole world will be watching. And Pant says, the greatest geopolitical event of the 21st century is the rise of China. The rise of China. That is happening in our neighborhood. The greatest. And then look at this beauty part of it. History. International relations is a very difficult subject. In our university, when we were studying, international relations was taught in 3 forms. International relations as history for history students. International relations as international politics for politics students. International relations as theory. There is model building theory and all that, billiards ball game theory, etc., etc. That's the 3rd dimension. Now, one question is, all said and done, it's history. What is history? There are students appearing for civil service examinations. Every one of them is naturally a student of history. I think history becomes a compulsory paper for them. They have to take it. Roberts wrote a beautiful line on history. He says, history is one subject where you cannot begin at the beginning. It's a paradox. History is one subject where you cannot begin at the beginning. Because he says, the roots of history lie in the pre-human past, and it is hard to grasp just how long that was. How long? There is a claim in India that pre-human history in India, you call it Vedic civilization or pre-Vedic civilization. The theory says that Indian, what you call mythology or history, dates back to 10,000 years before Christ. That's a different thing. Therefore, he says, history is one subject where you cannot begin at the beginning. The roots of history lie in pre-human past, and it is hard to grasp just how long ago that was. This is history. But then, why I have chosen this? For the simple reason that, reason number 1, not only this book, where Pant says India is nowhere near China. India as a global power is non-existent. India cannot, will not match China force for force in any area, says Pant. It's a challenge. But then there are people who disagree with that. That's a different thing altogether. Then what happened? History is a very dangerous subject also. I was fascinated to read, to get a book about 10 months ago, about 9-10 months ago. This is one of the extraordinary books I wanted to share with you because there are some youngsters. What a good book, how a good book makes a difference in one's life. I need not particularly tell you. 3 examples. This is Paul Johnson, Heroes. The title is very misleading. Heroes from Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar to Churchill and de Gaulle. Heroes. Big sweep of history. And this fellow begins very funnily. I was shocked. Because as I said earlier, when somebody asks you to give a lecture, you do homework. Doing homework is learning. Learning is relearning. Learning is also unlearning. Because sometimes we suffer from certain obsessions. Look at this man's audacity. Some lines I would like to read because what a difference a person makes. He starts with Alexander the Great. And I am quoting him. He says, Alexander was taught what a good teacher can do. Alexander was taught, Alexander was undoubtedly one of the greatest figures in human history. But not many know Alexander's father was a tyrant. Alexander's mother was also a tyrant. So to two tyrants was born this tyrant. And mother was murdered, and father had an ignoble end. And Alexander, he says, Alexander was taught by his teacher Aristotle. What a good teacher he was, Aristotle. There is a joke about Aristotle also. Aristotle was the most versatile scholar, most knowledgeable scholar of ancient times. Disciple of Plato, who was a disciple of Socrates. Very incisive minds. Aristotle taught him two things, Alexander. Number one, always carry maps with you. He was an invader. Our teachers used to say, two things are your best companions. One is a dictionary, the other is atlas. Today, young fellows will laugh at us. My grandson would laugh. Why dictionary, why atlas? I go to the internet and everything I'll get. Because the internet may not be 100% accurate or cooperative. That's a different thing. I am not entering into a very dangerous domain. Therefore, Aristotle taught Alexander two things. One is to carry maps. Secondly, use technology of the day. Wherever you go, use the technology of the day and the place. If you go to a small place in Andhra, the auto rickshaws are there everywhere. But still, the most comfortable mode of transport is the cycle rickshaw. If you go to Bengal, still today, there are some rickshaws pulled by human beings. They accept it. Cycling is not uncivilized art in any part of the world. We go to America, in some towns and cities, they say, professor has come, give him a bicycle. Because a car is very difficult to get. So art of using the technology of the place. Now, let me come to this. Alexander, I am quoting Paul Johnson. He was never content with his conquests. He wanted to rule everybody. And Johnson says, he was the first man to aim realistically at world rule at any cost. Mother, father, teacher, not spare anybody. And he says, Alexander was a murderer, and his battles a mass murder, a lifelong criminal. Look at these words. A lifelong criminal whose crime was the supreme one of war. And this book demolishes the great figures. History tells us, students of history say, Caesar was great, Alexander was great, Napoleon was great, etc., etc. This man literally devastates the theory. I'm quoting some of these words he used. He says, Caesar killed, look at this argument of this man. Julius Caesar, you say, was a great leader, great ruler. Shakespeare glorified him. He says, are they rulers or murderers? He says, Caesar killed 1 million people, Napoleon 5 million people, Mao Zedong 70 million people. And one historian added recently, Mao, Hitler and Stalin put together, the three, they have destroyed the lives of 2 crores of people in the 20th century. Are they great men? Are they heroes? He asks a question. Very brilliant, thought-provoking question. They were murderers, he says. Alexander was a murderer. Caesar was a murderer. Napoleon was a murderer. They were fanatics. But then history glorifies them as people who brought about a change in human history. I mention this in international relations today because 2 very, very important points this book raises. What is history? How is it shaped? Is it shaped by people who commit mass murders? Is it shaped by people who loot and plunder and destroy civilizations and cultures? Or is it shaped by great minds? He raises a question here and brings out another fascinating line. He says, who are the people? They have very beautiful lines. One day I will have a book discussion on this and share my reading with you. But then he asks a question here. He says, now who are the great people who literally, he says, he asks a question. Who is a great figure in history? He raises a question. How was history shaped? Then he gives a, look at this. Great people like Plato, Aristotle, St. Thomas Aquinas, Kant and Hegel, and closer to our times, Martin Heidegger, they all shaped history. They all shaped human thought. They were the creators and makers of ideas. But Socrates and Wittgenstein did not aspire to system building. Plato built a system of ideas. Aristotle built a system of ideas. Aquinas built a school of thought. Kant built a school of thought. Philosophers built schools and systems. But two persons, Socrates was not. Socrates and Wittgenstein did not aspire to system building. Their object was, look at the real teacher, their object was to teach people how to think. To teach people how to think and how not to think. Teach people how to think and how not to think. And having thought, how to articulate their thoughts in accurate words. Socrates and Wittgenstein did two things. How to think, how not to think, how to express yourself in clear thoughts. Therefore, they are the greatest, he says. And he says, Socrates allowed himself to be murdered because he held truth greater than an opportunity to escape from the jaws of death. And very interestingly, he mentions a point. Bertrand Russell, we always considered as one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. Russell was teaching. And this man, Wittgenstein, joins him as a student. This is one of the most beautiful things in life. Wittgenstein joins Oxford and he says, Cambridge, and he says, whom shall I approach as my guru? Go to Russell. He goes to Russell. And you know what Russell said? Russell was so overawed, so bowled over by the brilliance of Wittgenstein. I am quoting Russell. He was perhaps the most perfect example I have ever known of genius as traditionally conceived, passionate, profound, intense and domineering. In the history of civilization, no guru has given such a tribute to a Shishya. He accepts defeat. He was perhaps the most perfect example I have ever known of genius as traditionally conceived, passionate, profound, intense and domineering. And in an astonishingly short time, the tutor-pupil relationship changed. The tutor became the pupil and the pupil became the tutor. This is one of the most fascinating examples in human history. This is what he says. Now, I have said this because what a great teacher can do. Therefore, according to this man, the real heroes were Socrates and Wittgenstein in modern times. Having said this, I have thought that this world today that we present, in my humble opinion, when does modern history begin? Very difficult to say. Our teacher, Professor Gurti Venkatarao Garu, used to really struggle to explain to us the beginning of modern times. What do you mean by modern times? One historian said the history of ancient Athens was more modern than the history of modern Europe. Veerasalingam is definitely more modern than any great modern leaders of 21st century. There is no doubt about it. Therefore, he said, modern Europe was not as modern as ancient Athens of Socrates and Plato and Aristotle.